Hello everyone, and welcome back to the world of Dragon Age. Dragon Age offers us a huge world, and even after 9 years, some secrets still might puzzle most players. Well, today, I'm finally going to cover one of the main quests of Dragon Age, Broken Circle, with 10 things and lore facts you may not know about those elusive mages. First off, let's start off with some history of the Circle Tower. The Circle of Magi was built by the Avars with some help from, you guessed it, the Dwarves. The Deventer Imperium, however, drove the Arval people from this tower during the conquest of Ferelden, and likely used the tower as a type of fort, as we see evidence that the Deventer Highway was connected to the tower itself. After the Imperium was drove out of Ferelden, however, the tower was considered cursed and avoided at all costs until the Circle of Magi moved in many years later. The Circle itself moved in because their tower in Denerim was burned to the ground. So even before the Ronin came to the tower, it had a bloody history. For our number 2 slot, let's delve into what exactly happened in the tower in regards to those abominations taking over. See, after the Battle of Ostagar, Uldred, who we talked about in my video on Ostagar, which I'll link below, made an arrangement with Loghain to get the mages on his side during his civil war. Loghain promised the Circle independence from the Templars if the mages helped him, and Uldred was sent as an ambassador of sorts to work out this deal. Uldred called a summit of all the enchanters to convince them. However, Uldred had planned long beforehand that he was not going to take no for an answer, being one to strive for independence even before Loghain came along. He had prepared mages loyal to him to force the enchanters if necessary to agree to him. Well, force did become necessary, as after Wynne, who was also at Ostagar, arrived late to the meeting, and told everyone about Loghain's betrayal and influence in the king's death, the remaining enchanters immediately refused Uldred's deal. That was when Uldred rushed the meeting with several mages and started a large magical fight that ended in demons being summoned by Uldred, one of them possessing Uldred himself, a strong pride demon, becoming an abomination of his own. Wynne escaped then later, and then possibly aided the Warden, though, however, she escaped the story is a story for another time. For our third spot, let's talk about a character who is a bit of a meme in the DA community. Carol, the Templar Boat Guard. When we first arrive at Lake Calenhad, we encounter Carol, who refuses to let us pass to the Circle Tower unless we give in to some strange requests, such as cookies, sex, or even 40 whole gold coins. Now at first, talking to him, we can just assume Carol is a bit daft or just odd. However, asking Gregor about him, he is oddly dismissive about Carol's behavior. That is because Carol is actually suffering from extreme lyrium withdrawal, as Templars use lyrium to help dispel and fight magic, and lyrium itself is incredibly addictive, as we learn in the later games, through Cullen and other Templars. But however, as we learn later on by interacting with a dwarf in the Orzammar Dust Town, and Godwyn, a mage in the Circle Tower, there's actually a secret lyrium trade going on to supply Templars of this addiction. But because of the recent issues, the lyrium hasn't been able to arrive, which is likely why Carol is so off when we meet him. For a fourth spot, an important factor to consider during this whole abomination attack on the Circle Tower is that there are 5 fraternities of the Circle, which kind of helped influence Uldred and other issues going on during the Circle at the time. Fraternities are groups of enchanters who hold the same viewpoints, and they band together to make their voices heard. They function as sort of political parties among Circle mages. There's the Aquitans, which is a moderate group that believes that moderate use of magic, regardless of the chantry influence. Isolationists are a small group of mages that simply wish to separate themselves from general society. Praetorians desire the Circle to become independent and self-regulating, without chantry involvement at any level. This is the party that Uldred and many of his followers are involved in. Loyalists are mages who simply follow the chantry laws, regardless of anything else, and Lacrosians prioritize accumulation of wealth, while also gaining political influence, though there's not too many of this party in the Ferelden Circle. Mostly in the Orlesian Circle would you find this 5th party. Now what's interesting is many of the abominations we kill in the Circle during the Broken Circle quest contain letters signed by enchanters with their adjacent political party signed as well. Each give their opinion on Uldred's plan to join Loghain, Now, we learn a lot about these parties during the Circle of Magi origin quest, but most other wardens will have no idea about the fraternities or the influence they have during this time, and will have no context for these following notes. For our number 5 slot, let's talk about one of the greatest con artists in Dragon Age world, Beha Joam. I think I said that name right. See, Beha here is selling books that contain the words of the Maker himself. However, the tomb was written in an ancient language that would need to be translated first. So, 4 mages eager to discover the Maker's last words and see if they could rub it in the face of the Chantry bought the book for a whopping 479 gold sovereigns plus favors, which would likely be the equivalent of all of these mages' life savings, plus additional money from the Circle. Sadly, once they began translating the book, they realized it was a fake, and vowed to seek vengeance on Beha. Sadly, with the Circle the way it is now, it's likely the fate of these 4 mages was gruesome. However, upon leaving the Circle of Magi, after you find the 5 pages needed in the quest, you'll run into Beha, selling more of his fake Maker books, and you can quickly put an end to his lucrative scam with some up-close negotiations. Additionally, Beha has a mage guard with him, which is a unique sighting as there's not many free mages in Ferelden. Considering the offer for the book came with favors, it may be possible that one of the mages sold an apprentice mage, or a mage under him, into indentured servitude to Beha to cover the cost of the book, which would be extremely illegal by the Chantry standards. But hey, something to ponder. For our number 6 slot, we're going to delve into the Litany of Adralla, a main quest item which is a powerful artifact said to resist any form of mind control upon use. In the game, you have the option of saving some mages from Uldren's possession magic if you use the Litany. Interestingly, the Litany is named after a real person named Adralla, who was a mage so powerful she was able to counter every form of mind control, and counter demon summonings as well. Unsurprisingly, based on her studies of resisting blood magic, she wasn't very liked in her Tevinter homeland. After 3 different magisters attempted to have her killed, she fled the country, choosing to take refuge in Ferelden's Circle of Magi, where she likely used her knowledge to create the Litany, which we used to stop Uldren. Now, let's delve into one of Bioware's favorite pastimes, cut content. At the end of the Circle of Magi quest, there was going to be a unique interaction with Wynn, Gregor, and Irving. If you were a mage as well and had the Blood Mage specialization chosen for your Grey Warden, Wynn would have comment after fighting with you all the way through the tower, saying she noticed some interesting spells you used that were not especially Circle-approved curriculum. You could pass a persuasion check to just convince them it was magic used by good Grey Wardens, which does in fact work. However, if it failed, Wynn would accuse you of being a Blood Mage and proceed to attack you, along with the entire Circle of Magi. They really take blood magic seriously, those Templars. Now, while this interaction makes 100% sense in terms of lore, I don't really blame Bioware for removing this interaction. For one, it is definitely penalizing, considering after the fight, it was likely you would lose the entire Mage or Templar army from appearing in a battle with Denver. Considering you spent 2 to 3 hours fighting to get them in your army, I imagine players would be kinda pissed if they lost their main reward of the quest. Also, it does kinda make them seem annoyingly ungrateful. After just saving all their lives, they would immediately kill you just for picking a specialization. I mean, it is a specialization that typically summons demons, enslaves people, and commits human sacrifice, but I mean, hey, a warden's gotta do what a warden's gotta do. Number 8 slot, some additional cut content in the Circle of Magi happens during our first conversation with Gregor. When talking with him, Bioware initially intended a dialogue that would give you the option of turning in Morrigan to the Templars, letting Gregor know she is apostate mage. What's funny is Gregor will ask you if you're sure you want to do this, as he has more pressing matters to deal with the whole circle falling apart, as opposed to just one apostate. But if you do confirm that she is one, you will try to arrest her. Morrigan, however, escapes using shapeshifter magic, but not before vowing vengeance on the Warden for his betrayal. It makes sense why Bioware didn't include this though, as Morrigan is an essential character in Origins, and not having her in a party would drastically change some key story events. However, it still would have been interesting to see how the game played out if you did betray her. For our number 9 slot, let's talk about Jowen's connection with both Uldred and Logan. See, Jowan was an apprentice mage who was a possible friend of the hero Ferelden, if they chose the mage origin. Jowan was delayed for his harrowing due to lack of magical proficiency, and this frustrated him so much he took up blood magic in order to get strong enough to pass his harrowing. Eventually, though, he found love of Enchanter's sister named Lily, and decided to escape the circle instead. However, the Templars caught on that Jowan was a blood mage, and tried to apprehend him, forcing him to flee the tower. Now, all of this was covered in the mage origin, and I'm sorry for the repeat, but the context is important. What I want to focus on with all this is how the Templars actually knew Jowan was a blood mage. As in the origin, even if you tell Irving he attempts to flee, Irving already knows, and it seems he already suspected Jowan was a blood mage before he had any proof of it. Well, the trusted advisor to Irving on finding blood mage is actually Uldred, which is stupidly ironic considering he is a blood mage and has his own mini army of blood mages at his disposal. See, Uldred likely confronted Jowan and taught him some blood magic in order to increase his abilities. However, after teaching Jowan, he still hadn't been promoted to a mage, or really showed much potential. Likely Uldred saw Jowan as disposable, and to continue being trusted by Irving and the rest of the circle, he likely ratted Jowan out. What likely goes on in the circle is Uldred targets apprentice mages who show potential but aren't particularly A+ students. Like the hero Ferelden, for example, who was considered Irving's star pupil. Uldred wouldn't have bothered targeting him. Uldred shows these struggling mages some blood magic in order to get them to pass their harrowing and grow in strength as one influence in the circle. The ones that don't succeed at the rate Uldred wants, however, likely are routed out by Uldred to keep up his appearance as a trusted mage. We can take this a step further, as guess who Jowan works with after his escape? Loghain. We'll cover the whole story later, but Loghain saves Jowan from a Templar and offers to help him get back to the circle if he poisons the All of Redcliffe. But if you think about it, how the hell did Loghain even know about Jowan? Well, of course, his new best friend at Ostagar, Uldred. Uldred saw some use of Jowan even after he escaped. He told Loghain about Jowan, how easy he was to manipulate. Maybe even told him where Jowan would be hiding. Think about it, Jowan escapes right before the Battle of Ostagar, canonically, and Loghain heads to Denerim right after the Battle of Ostagar. So Jowan would have had to flee to Denerim right after leaving, and immediately see Loghain, who he doesn't even know at the time. It makes no sense unless Uldred was involved and had been manipulating Jowan from the start. Number 10 slot. It might seem a bit minor, but trust me, it is really juicy. Uceres, I think I said that name right, is a rare blade that you may have missed in the Circle Tower. In order to unlock the sword, you have to find some notes in the apprentice quarters, as well as 2 notes on the 2nd floor in the senior mage quarters. Then, when you head to the 3rd floor, there will be 4 statues you have to click on in order of what they are holding. The order is bowl, sword pointing up, sword pointing down, and then shield, which is in a different room where you fight a boss abomination. Now, after you do this, you will feel a strange rumbling and get a quest update. Head back to the room where you first met Wynn, and head to the basement. Once you click on the door there, a shade will appear named Shy Wurg. He drops Uceres. Now, Uceres is a very cool sword, not the most powerful in the game, but possibly the oldest usable weapon in Dragon Age. See, the blade predates Andraste, and was used originally by Dane, who trained a pack of wolves said to be the descendants of Mabari, and launched a major campaign against werewolves plaguing Ferelden. Dane then gave it to his son, Hafter, who was the first Terran of Ferelden, much like Loghain. After defeating an army of Darkspawn during the Second Blight, he ruled for several years as Terran before disappearing with the sword Uceres somewhere in Amaranthine. But how did the sword get to the Circle Tower, you ask? Well, a random object found by our trusty Mabari, named a Very Chewed Moist Book, details the journey of a madman who breaks the 4th wall by saying an invisible hand is clicking and forcing him to move. He rambles on for a while about cheese and his mom, but one part of his journal claims he found the blade Uceres, and sent it back to the circle to verify. where during the chaos we see of the Circle Tower, a shade likely picked up his blade and recognized its power and decided to hold on to it. That's my best guess anyway. One more interesting fact is the blade Uceres is actually the same blade we see in the beginning screen of the game, right where we can click our option for if we want to load or start a new game. It is the sword to the left, and it's the most prominent one that we see. I swear they put so much work into this blade, but we never see it again in the Falling Dragon Age, and I have no idea why. And that concludes our video on 10 secrets, details, and things you didn't know about the Circle of Magi in Dragon Age Origins. Thank you all so very much for watching, and tune into my next video, which will either be a full story of the Golems of Omgrok DLC, or on the Orzammar faction. Thanks for watching, folks.